to the bombshell corruption findings against former New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian. The ICAC has accused Berejiklian of corruption, but critics say the watchdog has overreached, has tried to justify its existence, and has just plainly got it wrong. Let's look first at the findings, and then we'll look at the criticisms of ICAC. Well, ICAC today found Berejiklian engaged in serious corrupt conduct through her secret relationship with disgraced politician Daryl Maguire.
Serious corrupt conduct findings against two individuals, the former member for Wagga Wagga, the former Premier. Here is our report.
Thank you for that, but our job right now is to agree to allow this to move ahead.
ICAC found Berejiklian failed to disclose their personal relationship and concealed her suspicions of his corrupt activities. It also found she awarded grants Maguire had lobbied for without disclosing their relationship, and in doing so, they said she breached public trust. The findings centre on two grants: $5.5 million to the Australian Clay Target Association and a $10 million grant for the Riverina Conservatorium of Music. ICAC found that she sat on the Expenditure Review Committee when the government awarded these grants, and that when they were awarded, she kept her relationship with Maguire secret. The ICAC claims the nature of their personal relationship was capable of influencing her conduct in public office. In one intercepted phone call, Maguire said to the Premier, and I quote, "I am the boss even when you're the Premier." Berejiklian told investigators in a private hearing that she didn't consider this a fair and accurate depiction of their relationship. She said, "When you have a position of power, it's very difficult in a personal relationship to address that position of power, and that's what I was referring to. It's very personal and private. It's got nothing to do with work." She said it's actually making him feel that because I was the boss during the day, that I wouldn't necessarily be exercising that relationship in private. Now, the ICAC fought hard to try make the relationship sound as serious as possible. But even the corruption body had to admit that they weren't living together. I quote, "Although Ms Berejiklian and Mr Maguire do not appear to have cohabited with each other for any significant period, Mr Maguire had a key to Ms Berejiklian's home, which she said she'd given him many years ago." Now, the state's political leaders today praised Berejiklian for her service to New South Wales during the pandemic. They also criticised ICAC for taking so long to hand down the report, the body content to drag one of the state's best political leaders through the mud for 2 long years. Here's New South Wales Premier Chris Minns and Opposition Leader Mark Speakman.
And the general public have an interest in making sure that ICAC reports in as timely a manner as possible. We all want to see a robust, independent ICAC. It's important that we have a robust, independent ICAC that flushes out corruption and gives the public confidence in the integrity of our institutions. But it's also important that those reports are produced in a timely manner.
This report takes away, I don't think, from Premier Berejiklian's handling of the COVID emergency, which I still regard as being excellent. It's important, however, for all politicians in New South Wales and anyone in public life or positions of leadership to understand that we must manage conflicts of interest. It's important that there's not an automatic resignation or a suspension from public life while the inquiry is taking place. Now, there may be circumstances where it's absolutely appropriate because the evidence is overwhelming, but it shouldn't happen in an automatic way.
Look, their points are fair enough, but these leaders lack the courage to take on ICAC, to point out its failings, lest the corruption agency secretly tap their cause and come after them. But former New South Wales Treasurer Matt Keane isn't afraid, and he will join me live shortly. But first, here's my view. What we have seen today is astonishing overreach from ICAC. Berejiklian lost her job as Premier during the pandemic when she came under ICAC's spotlight. If ICAC made no adverse findings against her today, the body would have been absolutely smashed and possibly even shut down. The body was under considerable pressure to justify, in effect, removing a popular premier leading the state very well during troubled times. Berejiklian is guilty, at worst, of a breach of the Ministerial Code of Conduct, at worst. But even that is arguable. She said, and she didn't, there were no findings that Berejiklian profited or benefited financially in any way. She sat on a committee that decided 2 community groups should receive funding. Every single electorate has community groups that get money. So would these 2 community groups have been awarded funding by the government in any case? Well, this is a question ICAC should have explored, because there's no suggestion that these community groups didn't deserve the money or that they misused it. And as the Rule of Law Institute of Australia Vice President Chris Merritt told me today, he said there was no pecuniary benefit to Gladys, and to declare her corrupt for failing to deal with a conflict of interest is ludicrous. He said it's a political failing. To call it corruption debases the language. He said the Ministerial Code is a political document and it was madness to outsource its enforcement to ICAC. Madness. So just let that sink in for a moment, what I've just quoted Chris Merritt as saying, that there was no pecuniary benefit to Gladys at all, meaning she didn't financially or in any other personal way benefit or profit from the grants that went to the 2 community groups. Merritt says to call this corruption debases the language. He also thinks that ICAC has actually made an error in misinterpreting the code. And I quote from Chris Merritt what he told me today. He says, it has a specific carve-out for the allocation of benefits designed to enhance the popular standing of a person or party. That does not, under the code, amount to a private benefit. It's in the definition sections of the Ministerial Code, which is an appendix to the ICAC regulation of 2017. Now, ICAC also did not recommend that the DPP seek charges against Berejiklian. ICAC did not find evidence to prove corruption to the criminal standard. And if someone is seriously corrupt, they should be in jail. The ICAC found no need for a DPP referral. It's a ridiculous, nonsensical finding. And don't forget just how many times ICAC has got it wrong. The body found former State Emergency Services Commissioner Murray Keir corrupt. ICAC said Murray Keir was corrupt. He had to go to court to prove his innocence. And I sat there in that courtroom, the only journalist, day after day for weeks, listening to how ICAC had suppressed exculpatory evidence and twisted other evidence to get their corrupt finding. A magistrate ultimately handed down findings that Murray Keir was completely innocent. The magistrate condemned ICAC in no uncertain terms. There's also been the former Police Minister Mike Gallagher, the prosecutor Margaret Cunneen, and so many others whose lives have been unfairly destroyed or ruined by ICAC. The former union leader John Maitland was acquitted of ICAC-related charges just before last Christmas, and he'll join me on the show tonight as well. As Chris Merritt says, ICAC is treated, particularly in the media, like some sort of oracle. People think it's infallible. But it is one of the worst, the most rotten institutions in New South Wales. I investigated it at length in 2014 and 2015 and found evidence that it flouts the law, it suppresses evidence that could prove someone innocent. It's basically a law unto itself. But in this instance today, the evidence clearly shows that Berejiklian did breach the Ministerial Code of Conduct. She should have disclosed her personal secret relationship with Maguire when awarding grants for community groups. But in my strong view, she is not, as the ICAC found, guilty of corruption. We should be having a discussion now about how ICAC has actually influenced our democratic process. Berejiklian may have gone on to be a long-serving premier, a popular premier like Mark McGowan in WA and Daniel Andrews in Victoria. The people of New South Wales loved her. Her approval ratings sky high. Her leadership during the pandemic was strong. And Liberal Party power brokers believe she would have won the election against Labor's Chris Minns. Dominic Perrottet didn't have the same trust, the same relationship with voters that she had. So this is serious election interference from a corruption agency that now has questions to answer.
Day that I've dealt with the public, every day that I've made decisions has been in their best interests of the public, of the government, of the community. It's been my honour and privilege to serve the community in that way. Obviously, I've had to fulfil my obligations to the Integrity Agency, and I do so respectfully. It's their job to look at these matters. But as far as I'm concerned, I've always put the public first. That's always been the case. It remains the case. And again, thank you very much, everybody. I can't really say any more than that. Thank you.